In 1945 and 1946, the Nazi regime's most important figures had to face up to the atrocities they collectively committed. Hitler, Himmler and Goebbels had killed themselves, but most of the remaining high-level officials that inhabited the murderous government and military were put on trial in Nuremberg. Those were the likes of Hermann Goering, once a heralded fighter pilot who collected orders and political positions until their amount nearly matched the size of his ego and arrogance. But his drug addiction and weight gain made him lose his position as number 2 behind Hitler. He said about his indictment, "Lots of people don't even belong here. Where does little Funk fit into this? He only took orders from me." Asked if he deserved to be tried, he answered, "Sure, I would consider it an insult if they had overlooked me." The prosecution laid open much of the Nazis' architecture of death that was previously hidden from the general public behind the fog of war. Confronted with the systematic, bureaucratized genocide of the Jewish population, the indicted's favorite line of defense was to insist on their adherence to the chain of commands. "For a soldier, orders are orders," exclaimed Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel. Most of the other 23 indicted war criminals echoed this military principle in their defense. In light of the Nazi regime's never-seen-before crimes, many psychologists took up the task of theorizing about the cognitive processes and psychological mechanisms that made possible the murder of 6 million Jews. Who are those people that blindly followed orders even when commanded the cruelest crimes? What brought about this radical obedience to authority? One proposition was the Germans are different hypothesis. German personalities were thought to be tilted to extreme obedience, discipline, and conscientiousness. Stanley Milgram explored this idea in his famous Milgram experiment. Milgram commanded participants to give increasingly strong electrical shocks to a Confederate enactor who acted like he was really receiving these electrical shocks. The voltage amped up over time to amounts that could likely kill any human being. The actor supposedly receiving those shocks was crying in pain. Still, the participants obeyed and executed shock after shock as they were told. Milgram showed that most human beings easily adhere to the influence of authority given certain circumstances. Consequently, there is no German personality trait that enabled Hitler and his followers to exploit the German people for his ill-minded worldview. There is, though, a personality trait that united the Nazi leaders tried in Nuremberg: their intelligence. Gustave Gilbert, the prison psychologist, had free access to the imprisoned Nazis. His duty was to check up on the prisoners' morale and keep close contact to them, ensuring their ability to participate in the trial. He administered several psychological tests to paint a clearer picture of the personalities he was dealing with. This, naturally, included the Wechsler-Bellevue Intelligence Test. The results the IQ test produced were considerable. The average IQ of the Nazi prisoners was 128. The evil Nazis were impeccably smart. The highest IQ had former economics minister Hjalmar Schacht, also called the financial wizard. Gilbert wrote about the later acquitted Schacht. he made no secret of the fact that he thought he was the most innocent man in the entire prison, and the most brilliant. Hermann Goering scored a 138, coming in third was a blow to his narcissism. When he heard that Schacht and Seyss-Inquart had outdone him, he scorned the unreliability of the test. The lowest IQ, though still above the general average of 100, had Julius Streicher, the publisher of the propaganda magazine Der Stürmer. He was completely captured by Nazi ideology, and even after learning about the atrocities committed by Hitler and his henchmen, he never let go of his anti-Semitism, militarism, and loyalty to the Führer. Nowadays, intelligence is by many considered to be a virtuous and eminently desirable characteristic. The IQ is a central sorting and screening data point. American college admission, and therefore the ability to enjoy the fruits of higher education, are based on what is essentially an IQ test, the SAT. The smart people, consequently, are thought to be the ones that drive humanity forward. But still, it was some of the smartest men in Germany that committed unprecedented crimes against humanity. Their brainpower had exceeded their moral limits. Now, what are we supposed to make of this failure of the smartest and brightest? It becomes evident that smart people are not necessarily good people. Wisdom, kindness, empathy, and an intact moral compass do not seem to correlate with your IQ. There is scarcely any connection between somebody's IQ and his personality. In the Big Five personality model, the trait that would be associated with kindness, empathy, and a caring soul is agreeableness. The correlation between IQ and agreeableness? 0. Intelligence may be a necessary condition for being a leader, but it's by no means a sufficient one. Maybe our technical ability has outgrown our conscience. Maybe human beings are the worst beast of prey after all, for lions, leopards and tigers only use their claws and fangs when they are hungry, whereas humans have the mental capacity to construct guns, bombs and drones paired with the moral immaturity to use them. Therefore, we must not only look for intelligence in our leaders, but rather peek into their hearts and souls to gauge their moral integrity.